Good day! Today we're going to focus on the role of education and schools in the X-Men universe and the consequent implications and beliefs that stem from them. As a teaching major, I tend to analyze and examine teaching and school structures in films and books that I read. Rather than focusing on the newest movie, we'll look at the whole of the X-Men universe through the lens of education.
Right. So what aspects stand out to you in terms of education? Xavier's school is not really a prominent focus of the movie, but it seems like there's something there.
Yeah, well, starting off with the movie First Class, the school is established first as a safe space where the group can learn to harness their individual powers. This is reminiscent of standard curriculums for me.
So, how so? The connection seems a little bit hard to see.
True, but the way I look at it is that the X-Men crew had to form their own group and school in order to develop their individual skills. The society did not permit them any opportunities to learn or develop them. Standard curriculums are similar in that they fail to address those individual talents and skills that students may have that don't fit into a normal curriculum. When that standardization is imposed, there's little space for individual growth and development. And if those more unique talents go unnoticed or are disregarded, then there's a chance that the student misses out on finding something he or she is really passionate about, thereby affecting future choices and the path one might go down.
Sure, but there are still opportunities out there for students who excel at something. For example, there's charter schools where someone can go to and focus on a certain subject.
That's true. But too often those opportunities, like after-school programs or tutoring, etc., are only available to those that can afford paying for extra things. That therefore limits the amount of kids that can actually utilize those resources. As seen on the outside of Xavier's school, it says that it's a school for the gifted. While that's also a clever way to disguise the school from evil eyes, telling them that it's not a mutant school, it's also a word that separates the students from others. Gifted in our world usually is used to separate those from the students on regular tracks. If Xavier's school is looked at through the lens that Magneto observes the world, then the word gifted takes on the meaning of superiority, a mentality and perception that is often relevant and related to programs in our own world.
That's interesting, Magneto's view of the world, since his utopia is rooted in superiority and not necessarily equality. It follows that having mutants in their own school might be a consequence of that mentality, even if Xavier does not necessarily believe in it. His utopia has the potential to be dystopic because differences are highlighted amongst the mutants and even the humans, and it creates a hierarchy. We don't need to look any further than our own history to see that that kind of thought leads to oppression, racism, and inequality, and suffering in general.
Absolutely. Xavier's utopia is rooted in coexistence, but that fails to show in his schooling. Yes, part of the curriculum is what you would see in a standard school. You know, you've got history, math, science, but there's still the separation of mutant and human that's not directly addressed. I suppose that could be the dystopic element in his setup, that the students who already feel distanced from society are further isolated. It's one thing discussing inclusion and a whole other actually implementing it and exercising it.
Right. Well, here's where we start to see the X-Men universe and its utopian and dystopian ideals, and how that's a direct product of our own society. A school system based on a hierarchy and separation has distinct ties to the civil rights movement. Most of the X-Men students don't really belong in a regular, normal school system, and that could make them feel rejected by society. Clearly, that's a dystopic element, because one group is receiving a higher level of education than another. When one race starts to assert superiority and dominance, in this case the human race, others are shoved to the side and are usually not considered equal on the same scales of justice and rights and humanity.
I agree. And with the racial inequalities in our world and the species inequality being the focus of the X-Men world, the school definitely becomes even more relevant and interesting. The students feel the consequences of rejection and othering by society on a personal level and in their own lives, but often don't necessarily see the more broad implications and the school's role in that system. Sometimes they just want to go out and fight with the adults and assert their powers and abilities. When Bobby, the one with the ice powers in the second movie, goes home to his parents and tells them that the school for the gifted is really a school for mutants, the parents react really negatively because they realize their son is an other. This speaks to the systematic speciesism that is in society, because all of a sudden he is not solely considered as their son, he is seen as an unknown factor. They don't know how to react to him. And he's seen as a risk factor, and so are the rest in the room, because they don't understand the role of mutants in the world. It's like a switch was turned almost. And we can see that risk factor taken seriously when Bobby's own brother calls the police on the group.
Right. I can see that connecting to the LGBTQ&A community as well. Oftentimes when someone comes out, they're rejected by their family, their schoolmates, and their friends. With the mutant universe, when a child or adult comes out as being a mutant, they're also seen as a freak or rejected by society. It can be seen that the human versus mutant struggle is representative of a lot of our problems in our own society.
Absolutely, and Xavier School tries to act as a place of refuge, and that can also be seen with the amount of bullying or mistreatment that can come from the discovery of being an other or not part of the normal system of things. But in his school, there's really no connection with the rest of the world, despite his desire for equality. The fact that the students don't feel comfortable being in the regular school most of the time or feel rejected by them is problematic and is intrinsic to the fight for equality that the movies encompass. So this definitely deserves some discussion, I think.
Right. So in summary, Xavier's education system reflects a segregated schooling and also highlights some of the differences.
Yeah, so for now, I think that's at least a good start to the discussion. We hope that this video sparks some interest and maybe some new ideas floating around in your head. Stay classy.